Hi everyone, I hope you're having a great weekend, and this is an overview of SAMR and TPACK and the models and the research which is really kind of at the cornerstone of using technology in our classrooms. So let's get started. So SAMR and TPACK come out of the belief that technology was not being used effectively in the classroom. And there are these myths that teachers use technology only for testing, that technology is essentially a $500 worksheet when we go out and buy an iPad. Technology is just for typing, showing videos, taking pictures, and playing games. And also that technology is only for Friday afternoon fun time, and that too much screen time is bad. And there's a lot of research on that, but the idea that any screen time in the classroom is bad is something that was pretty prevalent early on in the 90s and early 2000s when these models really started to take hold. So, what are these models? Some background. They're the major theories that drive technology integration today, and you'll hear about them. May have heard about SAMR or TPACK being used by your tech integrationists in your school system if you have one, or you may have gone to a PD about it. They're extremely pliable models. They're models that are easy to use. They're very well tested, especially TPACK. Less so SAMR, though. SAMR is used a lot. It's just that whether or not it has an impact on student scoring, there's still debate in the research about that. And it's useful really from K through 16. All the way through university, we use these models of tech integration. So SAMR. First, let's start with that. So it was, the original SAMR model is by Ruben Pentadora, and he started this work in the early mid-2000s. He talks about it when you watch his videos. I think he talks about being at Harvard in the 80s and starting to look at how the first technology that was being used at the university level was being integrated into the classroom, and then it became more sophisticated, and this is the model that we use today. So it starts out with this idea of substitution, that technology is a substitute for a tool that you use in the classroom. So you would read on an iPad is a really good example of that. Augmentation is that you would perhaps, so in substitution, where you might type a paper on a Mac or on a laptop or on a Chromebook, in augmentation you would use the editing tools that are available to you, like spell check or the thesaurus or grammar to augment the process. When we talk about modification, we would talk about using then that tool like Google Docs to share with each other and to do peer editing. And redefinition is the idea that we take an activity or a product that we're creating in the classroom and we do something that we could never have done without technology. So something like having children create a podcast or a video, or having them work with other students in other countries or in other states using Skype or FaceTime. So the model with SAMR, and Puntadora talks about this, it is broken down into two main pieces. These 4 parts are the enhancement piece, which is called below the line, and then you'll hear about above the line, this transformative teaching, and that's what what our goal always is to kind of reach this level, according to Puntadora, of transformative teaching above the line. And there's actually a blog about that I have a link for you. So I think that, well, let me say this first. Puntadora looks at SAMR as a ladder that you build up, and this is probably where this theory gets its most pushback, and I would agree with the pushback. looking at it as a ladder, that substitution is not as good as redefinition. And I think that that probably is not true, because sometimes substitution is absolutely the correct use of the technology. And you'll see that discussed in some of the material that I give you during this week. So let's look at these examples of substitution. So for example, in first grade, a student might read a leveled reader on an iPad. Or in fourth grade, they might type a paper on their Chromebook. And in sixth grade, they might take a multiple choice test on a laptop. They don't get immediate feedback, and the scores are posted online, or the scores are posted so that only the teacher sees them. In augmentation, the students listen and read along to a book on an iPad. In fourth grade, they might type a paper, as I said before, and then use the editing tools. And in sixth grade, students might take a multiple choice test in augmentation, and then given their scores at the end of the test with some feedback on their scores. And that is something that we see a lot in web-based programs, especially when we use them for math. Now, modification's a little bit more. It's a little bit more of a deeper involvement into the technology, so that iPads might be embedded with videos and definitions for new vocabulary. And I gave you an example here of an app called the Crack the Book app. And that app, you can go right here and you can go right to it when you look at this on your own. And it's really a great app, and I've used it, and it levels materials and has supporting materials from grades 1 through 6 according to the Next Gen Science standards. And so I think most of you would find this very interesting for your classroom. Fourth grade in modification is about peer editing, and in sixth grade, students might create their own test using Kahoot. Now, redefinition is really when we get to the most sophisticated use of technology. In first grade, students might share the book they've read and what they've learned used during doing green screen technology, like Doink is a really good app for that. I know that some of you have used that before. Students in fourth grade could create cartoons or animated books using Book Creator, which I know some of you have used that one as well. And students in sixth grade could create their own podcasts or a website on test taking. So, and I'll share with you throughout the course like different apps that are being used. And I think some of you are going to actually go over some of these apps in your discussions, which are going to be super interesting. I love getting all this stuff. So there are so many models for SAMR. And when you do a search on Google, when I did my search this week, it was 2 million results. I mean, there's a lot of ways to look at this. And so because of that, I don't want you to feel so tied to SAMR that you feel like if you don't have your children, your first graders, building websites and making podcasts by October of next year, then you failed as a teacher, then you've taken it the wrong way. There's lots of ways to look at it, and what's most important is that we want to be purposeful in our use of SAMR, and then we also want to make sure that we are using the technology in the best way that we can. So there's a great person, presenter and a former teacher, Kathy Schrock, and she's done a lot of work with SAMR. And this is how she looks at it. So if you are thinking about SAMR and especially if you work with Bloom's taxonomy a lot, I really like this model because it shows how SAMR corresponds to the levels of Bloom's. And then this teacher, Jen Roberts, created her own type of model based off of SAMR, and this is a link here to her blog spot. And she says that the focus of SAMR should be not about the technology, but about what the teacher and the students are doing. And she sees it as rather than looking at those levels of substitution augmentation, and so on. She says, let's look at ourselves as using tech to bring ourselves out of that traditional view of the teacher being the center, so that the students are creating, in the end, authentic products that are meaningful to them. A truly constructivist view. Visually, I like this model of SAMR. It's kind of a lot of fun, but it also says, how do I answer the question, I wonder what's in the ocean? And to get that answer, I need to use these different types of technology, right? Like, the best substitution for me swimming is to put me in a boat, because it's going to be more efficient than my swimming. Augmentation means that I can do some snorkeling, and here they're diving, and then here its redefinition is when I can use the submarine to do things that I could never do with any of these other technologies. These other technologies would not let me get to what I can get at with this much more sophisticated technology. So if I'm typing on my computer here, it's not going to give me what I can get out of creating and connecting with people through a website or a podcast, or being able to share the knowledge I've gained as a student. So I think this is really a great way to look at it. It helps me to kind of visualize it, and keeping these words enhancement and transformation in mind. So I'm going to stop this conversation here, this presentation here, and in the second presentation I'll talk with you about TPACK and then the combination of TPACK and SAMR.